Hey YouTube, Sean, Leslie the Dummies. If you're one of the lucky 6 people yesterday, you probably saw a video of me just rambling about CO2. I pulled the video because then after I even left, my wife said to me, she said, "What the heck is that?" And funny enough, there was a comment there that said, "I don't know what you just said, but it sounded important." So that was pretty much the point when I realized that I'll just redo it. So here we are again today. And I want to talk about CO2, and that's the awesome part about this community is, you know, we kind of all get in this little tangent for little bits at a time, and you know, DK's working with CO2 right now on a VKS, and the question comes up so often regarding CO2, and can you use it in your marker? And the answer really is yes. But the larger canisters, like the 88, 90 gram canisters, don't do very well at all in the your kind of typical M17, FSC, VKS blow forward markers. And the reason is the way the CO2 is situated, there is lots of liquid getting in to the firing chamber, more than is required to fill that space. So that liquid makes its way through into your O-rings, it freezes them, and they essentially get hard and it shoots them out. CO2, and I understand the convenience of it, guys, but it ain't cheap either. I mean, 240 12 gram CO2s is $200. Probably about 2 years ago, I paid $200 for this compressor, and it just keeps going and going and going and going, right? So the initial cost maybe up front isn't quite as obvious, but as time goes on, and if you're using this as sort of an at-the-ready device, CO2 could be a good option, and the reason is there's no need to worry about your air tank depleting. You know, the tanks, O-rings do just start to fail over time, and you know, some of my tanks have held air for well over 6 months, and others are empty in 3, empty in a week, which tells me there's a leak somewhere. But I do a lot of plinking, so it's not a deal breaker for me. But CO2 can be stored indefinitely, and if you watch and follow Rune Rebel on YouTube, he just used a maintenance canister, a CO2 canister from 20 years ago, he estimated, and it worked just fine. So see, that's a big pro to CO2. What I wanted to show you today was a setup I will be testing. It was something I talked about you know, a couple videos ago, and I said something that everybody might already have, especially you guys that bought all those CQMFs that were super cheap, and I think they're still on sale. They're like $199 US, and I think Canadian they were $279, which is unheard of because they're normally like $500 retail here. So if you did, you got a car stock, and I'll show you here in a sec. I originally had a car stock that I cut in half to modify, and it's kind of when I realized what it actually was. So let's have a look. All right, well, I got it on the table here. We can compare our, this is a TMC here. It's just got it set up right now with a 26 CI on it, and this is my M17. Here, let's move it a little more into focus here. Oops. All right, we'll just toss that aside for the moment. This is the setup that I want to test, and this goes with the whole CO2 premise. There are ways around liquid ingestion for your CO2, and I'm going to try and test some of those. And one of those ways is using an expansion chamber. So the CO2 pre-fills a chamber and allows the gas to, or the liquid to expand to gas. And it does so by boiling. And the side effect is that cooling effect that you feel on your device, your launcher, your marker. So the best way to get the best results is to turn that cold to warm that cold quicker. So as in essence, an expansion chamber is like a heat sink. It's designed to separate the liquid out, allows the gas to expand. The container itself helps release the cold. So that is a CQMF car stock. It turns out this tube is completely hollow. So I'm going to use it as an expansion chamber. Now it's hollow to the effect that there's nothing inside here. So I may have to experiment with adding some desiccant. And if you don't know what desiccant is, car guys out there familiar with like a oil catch can, you put something like steel wool, stainless steel wool inside, obviously so it doesn't rust, and the oil sticks to it and condensates and drops the water off. Well, it's the same effect with CO2. The more metallic surface that's in there, the CO2 will dissipate its cold into, or heat, sorry. So I'm gonna be experimenting with that, and I really do hope it works well. Now there's another thing that this car stock may have a very significant effect on, is if you get one of the new flow through type regulators. That there's a couple companies that have them at the ready. They're about to be released. I'm waiting to review one here shortly. Which first one would be Critical Situations. Jonathan over there sent one out to me, but our posties are really slow here. And Home Defense 24. So you can imagine this turns this into one very large air chamber. Now it's probably going to make the marker really inefficient on air, but it actually might boost performance significantly. But that remains to be seen. So expansion chamber, CO2 is one way to mitigate liquid. Now there was at the peak of its time when paintballing was taking over and CO2 technologies are changing, they realized the problem with CO2, and there were actually anti-siphon CO2 tanks, and it's like a nitrous bottle essentially. This would be your siphon tube. So you picture this tank in your marker, and it's I'm going to estimate like half full of liquid CO2. This tube would be in there like this, where it would draw gas from the empty space up top and not liquid. We don't want liquid. A little bit of liquid, it's okay. You know, it'll give you, that's where we see that nice little boost. But ideally, you just want pre-expanded CO2 in its gaseous state. It'll be the most efficient. It'll be the least damaging. And really, the point of my little CO2 exercise that I've been doing here is maybe to try and find something that we could say definitively will work for those that would like to use larger canisters of CO2. And obviously I'm starting small with a 12 gram. And I want to show off this adapter here too. This is the one I was waiting for from AliExpress. This is just an ASA thread, goes in the back of your marker, and this is a 16 gram, or it'll accept any 3/8 24 threaded cartridges. And you literally just thread it in like that and give it a twist, and she's ready to go. So I'll be testing that next, and I'm hoping if it goes well with this, then maybe I'll pick up some more 90 grams to try this. Really, that's all I wanted to say today. No shooting, sorry to disappoint. That'll be on the weekend. You'll get to see this puppy up and running first, but. All right, and there you go with the CO2 in the vertical position. 12 gram I've already kind of figured isn't enough. Well, it's enough to fire 6 shots, but you really get 4 strong ones and then the other ones peter out. So 16 gram will be next. I will be testing, but you can see in this position, it's not in the way at all. It actually makes for very quick on off, or on. There's no off, obviously. But I'm really liking this setup. I mean, I got a lot of markers that are set up for HPA, so thinking maybe I'm gonna have a couple set up for CO2. And the stock actually works really well. It fits the marker good, and there's a reason why I chose the car. Obviously, it's a true Vulcan product, but it's this right here. This stock locks into your heat core. This thing is rock solid. MCS sells a lot of adapters that probably, I don't know for certain, are very similar, that have an empty or a hollow tube, but they have that lock collar. I freaking hate the lock collar. I understand its purpose, but when I use that type of product, I like to tighten it down and use shims inside here, so I can just tighten it and don't have to actually use that collar. Well, that's it today, guys. So you'll just have to wait till the weekend.